Hello guys. Hello, welcome to another Everything Websites episode. Today I have another legendary Webflow developer, if you can say like that. I think he's someone that you know from LinkedIn. At least I know him from LinkedIn. Maybe you know him from some other place. His name is Mitch Davey. So Mitch, welcome to the show.
For sure. Thanks, man. It's good to be here. Thanks for the introduction. Legendary. I don't know if I'm legendary yet, but yeah, I think some people might know me from LinkedIn in the Webflow space. Yeah, for people that don't know me, my name's Mitch Davey, Webflow developer. Been working with Webflow for about 5 years now, and yeah, I've been posting on LinkedIn for about the last year now, so that might be where you know me from.
I think you have a great content, really, man. I think the work is great. Um, so yeah, I think I had another one before a couple of months ago. Actually, I forgot who it was. Um, but I don't have so many strictly Webflow developers. It's a mix of marketing team and stuff like this. So, but I think I have a lot of people know you from LinkedIn and Webflow Spaces. Um, yeah, so today we want to talk just a bit about Webflow, what Webflow can do, what is about integrations, all of this stuff. Is there some limitations to it and things like that? Like, is Webflow alone enough for most of the things, let's say? Uh, what are other tools we use or can use with Webflow? And yeah, overall, what we think about the tool. But to start with, can you maybe, Mitch, just briefly share what kind of projects you typically work on, and where Webflow fits in this setup for you?
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of the projects I work on, it's mostly like marketing sites related. So like marketing teams, I typically work with like startups, some enterprise like level stuff too. And so like the marketing team comes and says like, hey, we're already using Webflow and like we want to get the most out of it. And so like typically I don't really sell people on the idea of Webflow. Like they've already kind of bought into the idea that okay, yeah, this is like very valuable. It's just like how do we take it to the next level? Like how do we get the full use out of it? And so maybe that's kind of where the integrations or like custom code, things like that they're looking to integrate. Or maybe it's just like on the feature side of things, it's like maybe they need a better understanding of like what Webflow itself has to offer. So yeah, a lot of like marketing sites, just kind of taking it to the next level.
Yeah. The thing that you said is not a lot of people really. You don't really need to sell it. It also happens to me and my team quite a lot. A lot of people already know that Webflow works for them or works for someone else, and they have that experience and they wanna, or some of them even tried it before but decided to go with someone more professional that can knows the platform better and can do the things quicker and cleaner. But I also had, I had some comments like for example on LinkedIn that people say that you can really do the same things with any other platform. There is no really developer dependency. What do you think of that? I mean, is that true? Can you really do all of the things that you do in Webflow with any other platform with the same level, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. Like, I mean, there are other like CMS solutions out there, and so if the idea is like, okay, you just need like kind of marketing site with a blog. I mean, there's lots of solutions out in the market that can do that. Even some of the more kind of like no code side of things, it's not like you need even a developer to like build that from scratch. So from like that angle, yeah, like I can kind of like understand where people are coming from. Um, that being said, I think like Webflow has a lot to offer in terms of like the ease of use, like to be able to like get into the platform And like maybe this is what you're seeing with some clients too, is like they've gotten into the platform somehow, like maybe someone on their team is like kind of built some things out already. And yeah, and it's like it's easy to get into, but the actual like scalability of like what you can do with it is so high. And so I think that's what's interesting about it is like I think people like understand there's a lot you can do with it and it's easy to get into. I think just naturally, like they reach a point where, okay, yeah, we need like an actual developer. Maybe we need someone that knows like more of the code side of things, and like maybe we need um, like a freelancer or an agency that understands how to get to that higher scale.
What do you do in that kind of situation where they, I mean, if they come to you, they already tried it before, do you just continue building on top of it, or you just suggest it to start from scratch?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like it really varies, like the state of the project when uh, that comes in. Typically, like what I recommend is like a rebuild, which doesn't necessarily mean a redesign either. I think a lot of people get kind of stuck on that idea is like they've gone through this design process and then they've built it out. And then when you
Yeah.
kind of say, okay, we need to rebuild it. And then in their mind, they think, oh man, it took so long to design. We had to go back and forth. Um, but typically like the rebuilding part it actually speeds up the process long term, depending on the state of the project that comes in. But I mean, if nothing's componentized or like the naming is all over the place, then yeah, long term, it's going to be much faster to actually like rebuild it. But yeah, like the content's already there, the design's like already there. A lot of the actual decision making around the website has already been done. You're just like componentizing and just overall like improving the architecture or CMS, things like that.
Yeah, the cleaning up things, especially if but they probably didn't use any framework before, so you can have a lot of issues with repeating classes or having too many of them, or updating something and that suddenly you mess up something else.
Yeah,
Things like that. Yeah, yeah.
100%.
But I also I also saw. I mean, what do you think if the project becomes more complex that you need more integrations, or I mean, do you need integrations? Probably depends on the platform. But if you do need them, do you think you could achieve the same results with some other website, maybe some other platform, maybe like Framer or WordPress or something else?
Yeah, I mean it's a good question. Like, I have kind of limited experience with these other platforms. Like I've played around with them a little bit, but in terms of actually the client work, I've not really delivered anything with those.
Hmm.
I think too, like they're becoming more like feature rich. I think like Framer's CMS and stuff is getting more interesting. So like I can't speak very much in terms of like what the other platforms can do. Um, but like I've just seen a lot more demand in Webflow in general. Um, and I think the thought process people have for that is just like planning for that scalability. Um, Part of that like is integrations. And a lot of clients already kind of have those integrations in mind uh, when they're going over this platform. And I think like even Webflow's kind of own native like app, it's not really a store, but to be able to like include these apps straight out of the box, like for example, HubSpot is like already good to go like inside the Webflow ecosystem. So um, yeah, so a lot of these clients have integrations in mind, and I'm sure like in the research phase of when they decided to go for Webflow, they've probably seen that yeah, it's a really natural fit with what they're aiming for.
We had some integration. I don't know if you heard about it. Bullhorn. It was it was a website, recruitment website, and they used that platform to uh, publish their jobs on other platforms. They call from one place, and they wanted to integrate that with Webflow. Now, Bullhorn is very tricky to integrate, not only in Webflow, but any other platform. So for example, in that case, we had to use make. Did you had any kind of these kind of situations where you cannot really natively or easily integrate, but you need to use some other tool in order to make it work?
Yeah, 100%. In terms of like no code integrations, like Make has always been like the go-to. Um, a lot of clients too, of course, work with like Zapier. It's just a little bit more user friendly, I think. But for more complex integrations, like yeah, Make is usually the tool to reach for in those cases. Um, Started playing around a little bit more with like N8N and things.
Mhm.
But then like there's kind of this bigger move towards like AI and MCPs. And I think in general, like even the idea of what an integration is anymore is kind of changing. Like when I first started in the Webflow space, like integrating things was like connecting this to this with like Zapier or like
Yeah,
connecting these two systems with like Make or something, right? And so this idea of like a persistent connection between like two services, in my mind, is kind of what an integration is. Uh, and so like Make and Zapier is a very clear example of that. But I think even now it's like starting to change, and I think people are reaching more for like code and AI and MCPs and things like that. And it's becoming definitely a lot more complicated that even like Make itself uh, may not fully capture like what's possible now.
what is your stance actually on when we are talking about the AI help like MCP, Claude? Do you think that can work pretty smoothly with Webflow?
Yeah, for sure. The best example, I guess, is like the Claude connection with Webflow now is like a big thing. And so just to be able to like connect with an MCP to the site, uh, and being able to talk to the site with basically
Mhm.
chat UI is very interesting use case. Uh, I mean, yeah, the ecosystem's growing all the time. Like I'm more of like a cursor guy and hook in
Of
with
course.
MCP that way. Um, but like I've seen clients now even like moving more towards like Claude, and like they're pretty
Mhm.
familiar with what's possible with MCP too, which is like really cool. Um, but yeah, I mean that's a really interesting direction that things are going. Is like even the clients themselves are becoming really capable with AI and like these kinds of integrations.
Yeah. Can you tell me maybe at what point these integrations become necessary, maybe for Webflow?
Yeah, for sure. Like um, a couple of examples recently, like off the top of my head, is like even managing like CMS content, like
Mhm.
the like Webflow CMS is like very strong, of course, and like the UI and everything is very intuitive.
People use Clay, for example, for the CMS. Did you try it?
Clay for the CMS?
I think they used Clay to update CMS actually, in a bulk maybe for Webflow.
Oh,
So
sorry. Do you mean Claude or Clay or
Clay.
Clay? Yeah. Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
use it.
No, that's new to me. Um, yeah, that's interesting. What are people doing with that?
They use Clay to update many, like thousands of CMS items simultaneously.
Okay.
Um, I didn't really use it. That's why I asked. Like, because yeah. Um, but let me just quickly check. Yeah, it's Clay. Yeah, Clay. Maybe they didn't use it before, but it's one of the tools that people use to update things
Interesting.
quickly.
Gotcha. No, that's new to me. But yeah, like that idea of like updating multiple CMS items, um, it's definitely something I've seen a lot of clients moving towards now. The Webflow CMS is strong. The UI is very intuitive, but like at the end of the day, you're still kind of clicking through, and for certain things that can be a bit tedious. But I'm seeing like, even clients now like using MCP and just like bulk updating a bunch of things from a chat interface. So yeah,
Did you try it that way through the MCP?
yeah, been doing that. An interesting use case for that is like translating content for like multi-locale sites.
Mhm.
Um, So like, Webflow of course has great localization. There's some like built-in kind of machine learning translation. But like you don't have a lot of control over the actual translation of that content. Um, and like I've had, certain projects where maybe it didn't fully capture like the spirit of the content. And so an interesting use case for like MCP is actually using it to translate the content and bulk updating the CMS that way. And so like you could tell the MCP, like Claude, exactly like how you want this translated. It's like go analyze the brand, the spirit of the content, and translate it that way.
Yeah. Um, but it's interesting. I mean, we know that the integration they solve multiple problems. For example, this one can solve the managing the CMS, updating it. There is also Webflow also have this option where you can export everything as a CSV file. And if it's easier for you, do it like that. Then the clay thing that I mentioned. Um, do you know, I mean, can you maybe say what other kind of problems we can solve with Webflow, with integrations in Webflow? Is there anything else, I mean, apart from that?
Yeah, I mean, some of the more common ones you see is just like you were mentioning before, like the kind of job posting service. So like a lot of clients they manage like the HR and kind of job and hiring thing with an external service. But then they actually want to show the job postings on the website. And so that's like a good use case for an integration where you're just like syncing the hiring software data into the Webflow CMS, which is great because like you get complete control over how that job posting looks through like Webflow's visual editor. But then you're managing the data side of it in the service. So I think that's like a really strong example. I've seen that countless times with clients.
But maybe at what time you decide, or for example, what's going to be integration and what's going to be native within Webflow?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like especially I think with even the release of like Webflow Cloud now too, like there's a lot of open questions about like, what can you keep within the kind of Webflow ecosystem and what would require you to use something like Make or Zapier or one of these like traditional kind of integration services. And so that's a question I've been thinking a lot about is like, when do you move outside? When do you keep it in? It really depends. I think in general, like playing into really the strengths of Webflow is anything that is like, presenting something on the page with like HTML and some kind of styling, lean more towards Webflow. But if you're handling like a lot of data, especially like these outside services like job postings, for example, then it's
Mhm.
probably better to lean into like more, one of these services or more kind of uh, database style management. But then, Webflow Cloud now has like databases and stuff. So it's like, uh, there's opportunities there to keep it within Webflow.
Yeah, Webflow is trying to back it up all the time with native tools, just like the AO one that they just announced. Hopefully, gonna come sooner than the Webflow conference. That kind of tells me that something tells me it's gonna be on the conference. So who knows? Um,
100%.
yeah. So, if, for example, you're gonna build a new Webflow project today, what would be your default maybe stack? And how would that look like when you're building
Yeah,
your
I mean,
project?
default stack would be, Webflow would handle all the visual presentation of data, and then, CMS for most of the data itself, in terms of like, blogs, case studies, like anything that, you know, uh, there's going to be some kind of content or editor style role that's jumping in and like, hey, we need this new thing. All of that can be handled like very easily within Webflow. So I've tried to do as much as possible in there, but then I think I would default to something like Make, uh, with the assumption that probably going to need to make some kind of connection to something outside at some point. Um, so between Webflow and Make, I mean, you can cover a lot of ground. And then it's just a question of what are you connecting into from there. And that's really like case by case basis.
Yeah. Um, from my side, yeah. Well, again, the similar thing. We try to keep things in Webflow as much as possible. But yeah, there's the most common issues that you run into is when you have some integration with some unknown platform, like we had for the Bullhorn. Maybe it's unknown to me, but obviously it's pretty much known for someone else. But there's so many of them that the Webflow or any tool cannot really cover all of them. So you really need to have a tool like Make or something that's gonna make the connection between all of these tools and make it seamless. Um, but yeah, but like we said, Webflow is anyway always try to have native solutions for the most common things. So it's just a matter of time when at one point we'll do all. But so since we are talking about the integrations, what would you say would be the difference maybe between in this kind of integrations in Webflow and maybe plugins in WordPress? Because WordPress has a lot of these plugins that a lot of people are complaining about. Are these integrations the same thing? What would be the difference?
Yeah, it's a good question. I can't speak too much to WordPress. Like, I was fortunate to kind of like miss that whole part. Like, I was really Webflow from day one, kind of guy. And like the way I got into Webflow too was like everyone was speaking so poorly about like WordPress and complaining about plugins and things, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna skip that.
I tried it and then I gave up like in the first hour because it was so messy. You cannot just really do anything. You need to go in and then you need to find a team. And not every team can do everything. So you need really to know which team to use. And then you need plugins and all this and becomes so messy. Uh, I mean, completely opposite of the user, like negative user experience. So this is one of the reasons why I gave a shot to Webflow and Webflow was so seamless. But yeah, I mean, if you cannot say much about these things, that's fine. It was just a question so that, for example, if someone that don't know much about these things, to help them maybe guide them through the decision-making process.
Yeah, maybe like one point on the question of plugins, because yeah, I mean Webflow has like this whole kind of apps idea, like you can jump in and plug and play these kind of apps. And a lot of people say like, oh, is this just WordPress plugins all over again? And from my understanding, is like a lot of the trouble from WordPress plugins is that like kind of anyone can make it. Really, there's kind of no quality control, or you're really dependent on like what the community thinks are the better choices.
Heard
Um,
support well,
yeah,
whatever happened.
yeah. And so like uh, I think what's maybe different from like the Webflow apps is there's a lot of like first party support. And so like, HubSpot directly has an app with Webflow. And so I think there's probably like increased kind of trust and probably quality too.
Yeah, I mean, from the plugins, I mean, from basically from the WordPress perspective, is that just like you said, I mean, the Webflow strength is in the ecosystem. Like everything is within the Webflow reach. Whatever happens, you can reach out to support to fix it. I mean, if you work with some other integration, there are also ways that you can do it. Like either they these platforms gives you a embed code or something that you can do it, or you either connect it with Make. Whatever you do is just easy to do. You don't need to, and you don't need manual updates like you have with plugins. So, like I didn't use it so too much, but I researched a lot about the WordPress, so I know a couple of things. Not too many, obviously. But for example, to get back to the Webflow tools, what would you say that would be something that is good to have? Something that you maybe is is good, a tool, an app, or integration framework, whatever that you cannot work without in Webflow.
Tool app. I mean, in terms of like integrations, I know we've talked a lot about like Make, and I think yeah, it's a kind of like comforting feeling of knowing that Make can handle a lot of external integrations. Like I know clients have like many different requirements, and maybe they've already had some of the kind of technology like chosen, and so uh, it's hard if they come to you and they're like, "Can you hook into this thing?" Uh, and you know, it's always like this feeling of like, "Oh, I don't know, maybe," and you never want to be in a situation where you're like, "No, I can't." Um, and
That's,
so, you know what I mean, right? It's like,
that's where you
uh,
want to be.
yeah, yeah, it's tough. Like people and companies get really attached to like their technologies and the tech choices, and so like it's good to be really adaptable. And so that's why it's really kind of comforting to have something like Make, is because it can really handle most
Mhm,
use cases. And so yeah, like what I was saying earlier, like Webflow plus Make uh, is really solid to build from.
mhm. Well, by the way, what kind of framework you usually use? I mean, do you go with?
For yeah, I'm client first. Yeah, everything's client first. I've explored like Lumos a little bit, and like I can see the benefits of it. Um, but yeah, to kind of like move over to another framework, there's like a little bit of a switching
Yeah,
cost. You have to relearn
yeah,
it, and naturally it slows you
yeah. It's
down. But
also a learning curve, so you need
yeah,
to
yeah,
the new framework. I heard a
yeah,
good things, almost, but we didn't try it. I mean, obviously, then if there is more people to adapt to it, then it's even more complicated. But I had a pretty good tools. Did you try it before?
yeah. I've tried it like a little bit, just building out some test things.
Hmm.
I know there's like a little bit more of like the kind of upfront work, like getting the system, design system all built out. Um, which is a little bit more like complex. But I can see the value of it. Like there's a lot of built-in things that are really smart. Um, I think another thing too is like finding other Lumos developers, especially like if you're coming from an agency context. Is like
Yeah,
you build all
I think
these client
I think
projects and
one or two only. I don't know
yeah,
too many.
so yeah, I mean, there's a couple out there. I've met some of
Yeah,
them, but like I can understand if if you're running an agency, it's like it's hard to build all the client projects out with a framework that maybe is not as popular, even though maybe it's better.
yeah, yeah. That's one of the issues with the new things. It's difficult to scale, difficult to apply to the ecosystem, especially if it's a group of freelancers or different team members. It's not just freelancers. For example, sometimes we have projects where we work with a client and they cover certain areas internally, and then you need to kind of match their energy and the process and stuff. That can be tricky. So I assume that's a similar angle that you're coming from as well. That when you need to sometimes work with someone else, and then I mean, how do you do these kind of things when you need to collaborate with someone else that has a completely different way of working than you do? How do you find this best middle ground?
Yeah, I mean it's tricky. Uh, I think part of it is just like really just mutually deciding on a framework. That of course helps. Um, but then there's cases of like, okay, we're using client first, but like my client first is different from your client first kind of thing. So
Yeah.
like even in frameworks, it can be hard to like completely coordinate. Um, in which case I think like you kind of just need to accept that there's going to be like different ways of solving the problem. And then like if you're spending too much time like arguing over like the names of CSS classes or something, it's like you got to see like the bigger picture, right? But it is tough. Like collaboration is always tricky. Um, but there's solutions and just see the bigger picture.
Obviously, yeah. Um, but actually, what the right tools, the right approach actually improves when you get it right? What actually improves to you, in your opinion?
Yeah, like if you like get the frameworks down, the tools down, and everything, like everything in general, it runs smoother. The thing with like web dev, web design, and it's like every project is like kind of different. There's different problems to solve. There's different needs, and so the last thing you want to be doing is like trying to figure out like tools and frameworks and stuff on top of that. And so eventually you kind of just choose like, this is what we're going to use. Like, these are the tools we're going to use. This is the framework. Even if there's new stuff, there's better stuff. It's like, there's only so much you can realistically handle at once. And so if you're really focusing on like client work and solving those problems, it's like everything else needs to be like figured out, smoothed out, and just focus on like the actual problems on that.
Um, but since we're talking, there's like too many like different systems, different ways of working, and all of these things. When you think about all of this stuff, Webflow and all of this approach really reduce the developer dependency, or it just shifted? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah, it's like it depends on the client needs, like what
Hmm.
you're trying to accomplish with the website. Um, but I'm of the opinion like you'll probably always need a developer in the loop kind of thing. Like even if you build everything, from the beginning, everything's componentized, CMS is all built, uh, and you kind of give guidance and instructions on like how to use everything. That can get you a lot of the way. Like, you can make things really intuitive for somebody like a marketer or copywriter or something to be able to jump in. Uh, but I think a lot of clients too even like having a developer available just for those edge cases where maybe there's something that needs to be built that these other roles can't do, or you just need like more clarity on what's already built and like how to use it.
And so if, for example, everything is set up properly, um, and you hand everything over to the marketing team of your client, um, do you maybe know how much that impacts the speed of launching, maybe, or the updates when they need to work on their own? Does it really help them? I mean, how much that impacts all of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps a ton. Like the speed. I've seen some clients like the change of like before working with them, before getting them all set up with Webflow and everything. The speed difference is really dramatic. Um, and so like there's a lot you can do to build things up front and like help them to increase those velocities. But you know, where I've seen even like further velocity is like where the client really kind of takes ownership of like understanding how to use the system and like even layering it on top of that, like the clients that are interested in things like MCP and Claude and things like that, where it's like, if you build out the structure of the CMS and the components and everything in Webflow, when they start adding in like these workflows with AI and things too, like it moves even faster. And you've built it in such a way that it doesn't break or can't break. And so like there's no kind of hesitation or fear. And so they can really just like push out the content um, without fear of breaking things.
Do you have any maybe experience with a larger organizations working on all these things? Because when we have a larger teams, there is maybe different layers to it, different approval processes, or multiple of them. How much this becomes more structured and complex when it comes to the larger teams?
Yeah, I think it's like a really good question, and I think it speaks to a lot to like where Webflow is kind of going. Um, yeah. Like in the beginning, I think the kind of messaging or even the marketing around Webflow was like all about speed. It's like,
Mm,
with no code you can build faster. You
anyone
don't need
can
a
do it.
developer. Yeah, like this kind of language of like go fast, fast, fast. Um, but then like Webflow is of course moving towards like more of an enterprise kind of
Yeah,
direction as well. And then like the needs of those clients are different. They're not all just like push, 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 like throw it out there and see what happens. It's really measured of like approvals, like you were saying, um, like let's make sure nothing gets pushed accidentally, like before it doesn't need
I
to
had
be
a
out
couple.
there.
Then it's a disaster.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if there's like any kind of miscommunication about like when should this press release go live kind of thing. So the mentality is really different. It's not so much about speed, it's more about control. Um, and Webflow is really moving towards that and giving the features that give that more.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, we had some experience with that where someone published something and it shouldn't be live yet, and it was like a lot of drama within the company. Uh, because, for example, these particular clients didn't want it to go with Webflow Enterprise, and Webflow Enterprise you really need if you want to have that kind of control. For example, that anyone can do updates, but only a one person can publish it live once it's approved. And this is actually, I mean, what you get in the end, because when you have multiple people working on it, you need to have a structured hierarchy of who can do what. Otherwise, it's a chaos. So I guess it makes sense for this kind of teams to have Webflow Enterprise. I mean, Enterprise does not obviously work for everyone. Um, so yeah, for them, it's pretty much have a lot of sense. Did you have any experience with Webflow Enterprise before? Did you try it out or at least?
Yeah, I've worked on projects with Webflow Enterprise. Yeah, I mean it's really interesting. Like um, the what is it? Like the whole way like things are published, basically. Like you were saying, like more permission based things. There's like an extra level of protection like before you go live too, um, which is very interesting. Um, but yeah, I've only worked with like a couple of those projects. But like I think there's more and more companies that are like getting on board with that. So I think it's a good like skill set to like have moving forward too.
Yeah, I mean, I met even some developers that only work with enterprises, and like
Mm,
they work in a company or agency or something, and their job there is only to update enterprise websites because it's a
mm.
complete way of working there. Uh,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yes, it makes sense for the larger teams.
Yeah, for sure. Like for me, it's like admittedly like not my favorite style. Like I really like to take things from like 0 to 1 kind of. I like the speed of it and things like that. When everything gets like kind of approval steps and things like that, it's not my style, but um, there's clients definitely with those needs.
Um, since we talked about a lot about integrations and stuff like this, do you think Webflow at one point will evolve in a way that can replace all of them, or that at least we will not need them at all, that everything can be done natively?
Yeah, it's um, I think it's possible in terms of with what's possible with Webflow Cloud. I mean, it's still not entirely a mature platform, but like the kind of
Is it still in beta, or is it still in
I
beta?
don't, I don't know actually. I think yeah, in the dashboard it still says beta, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, there's certain even kind of limitations within it too that kind of prevent it from being like a complete solution. But I mean, like theoretically, if if you can code and you can host it on the cloud, there's almost limitless possibilities.
Yeah.
Uh, and so if clients or companies are willing to go that direction, like I don't think so. I think people want like a ready-made solution already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it would make sense for enterprises again because they're gonna control it, and especially if you have a lot of needs and different customized uh, things that you want. But yeah, it's a good point. I think the Webflow Cloud is maybe going in that kind of direction so that you can have no limits to it. So hopefully one day we can see some of this. Um, yeah, but what do you think of the in the future for Webflow about the modular stacks? What do you think is the future for that?
Modular stacks?
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm familiar with that. What do you mean by modular stacks?
I mean instead of this kind of like uh, integrations where that can be done natively,
Mhm.
is that more of the future, or maybe it's more the future of the to do them with the modular stacks instead of
Okay,
that?
that's it. Yeah. I think like the modularity is like a benefit. In terms of like even something like a job posting or like HR
Mhm.
platform or something like to rebuild that from scratch uh, for your own company and then host it on like Webflow Cloud. Like I don't think that's going to be a direction that like a lot of companies are going to pursue. Uh, and so I think people want like ready-made, like maintained quality, like modular software that they can just easily integrate with Webflow. Uh, I think that's probably the future, but we'll see.
Okay, okay, we'll see. Like we said, Buffalo is investing a lot in the in this as well, the cloud, and then but there is also they want to make things simpler. So we'll see what the future holds. But for example, if someone is just has started to learn Webflow, maybe or maybe what should teams start learning now to stay ahead of everybody else?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, it, it's like a thing too where like Webflow is releasing so many features and things like even as a developer, it's hard to like stay on top of everything that's possible.
Yeah.
Uh, and then like I can only imagine for like clients or like maybe more marketing roles, like for them to be as interested and to stay on top of it too, is maybe like a big ask. And so if there's like some kind of skill that can like help you uh, stay on top of things even further, I think it's like really AI. Um, and kind of what I mean by that is like the whole idea of things like agent skills and stuff like that. Like I really think those are going to replace like a lot of like the kind of integration side of things, but also like keeping up to date with the platform. And
Yeah.
so like I don't know if people in the future are going to be like reading the blog like every week and seeing, oh, what does this new feature do? What does this new feature do? It might just be like a kind of agent skill or something that you like update and then just ask like Claude, like, what can I do? Can I do this kind of thing?
Yeah.
And so I think I would really recommend people to make the use out of make as much use out of AI as possible, like learn MCPs, learn Claude, because I really think that's going to be like the layer that people interact with these systems now.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good advice, and I completely agree. I know there's a lot of people that try to neglect AI and say like, but AI is definitely the future, and the sooner you realize that and start working on it, you're gonna be better off. So I completely agree with that approach. I think we should just try to leverage of that as much as possible. Even so, when we work on our own blog to update some stuff to make it more AI friendly, there's also someone, Sofian actually from AO Copilot. Maybe you know him from LinkedIn. He told me like, okay, I am on a blog, but I don't really want to read all of this stuff. Can AI just summarize it for me? It was like, that is a really good question. So what we did is we added how we call them action buttons. So when you click on it, uh, we do have our own AI called like Atlas that Atlas can summarize for you. But if you don't want it, you can just go click on it, you go to ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude, and that tool can summarize it for you. So because I mean, this is where it goes. People really want to even that they don't really even want to read all of the
Yeah,
stuff and trying to they want AI to figure out for them. So like, okay, let's try to do that if we can. So we'll
yeah, 100%. Like, um, yeah, even it makes me even think sometimes about like what Webflow's role in all this is going to be, and because it's like even okay, you can build out perfect component systems and things in Webflow, and you can kind of teach clients like how to use it, and but then like they send you a message like, oh, I vibe coded this thing in Claude, can you put it on the website? And
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
well, yeah, you can. Like now you can, which is really interesting. So like even as streamlined as Webflow's like visual development is, it's like clients are still reaching for AI, you know,
Yeah.
and I think a good skill set for people even in the Webflow space is like kind of learning to communicate with clients like in that way. Like they're gonna bring ideas to you with AI, and it's like you have to
We
figure it out.
even we even built this our Atlas tool with the help of AI. Don't know anything about the backend or the custom coding, but we built it and it works through with Claude, with Cursor, all of these tools. So we and AppStash as well. So we build a tool that works. So like you said, the possibilities are endless. And even if you don't know how exactly to write a code, for you it's enough to understand it, how it works, and then you can use it properly. There's many cases also in Claude where if you need maybe some custom animation, you can ask Claude to give it specific instructions. It can create a piece of code for you so you can, or even just give instructions how to do something similar in Webflow. So yeah, leveraging from and learning AI, I think it would be it's the best possible advice that you can give someone that is want to scale up or just starting out. But one of the we're closing to the end, so I would just want to ask you one of the final question is if someone is building in Webflow today, what's the one thing they should do differently when thinking about integrations?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like especially coming off of like the kind of AI kind of questions too is it definitely like changes the considerations of how you build now. Um, and so like I think having a plan of like what you're trying to achieve like up front can really help. Like if you know what systems you're going to be connecting into, um, things like that, like the actual integration part or like building integrations or connecting things, like a lot of that has already been kind of solved. And so I think like you should take the time and kind of energy savings from that and focus really more on like what you're trying to accomplish with it, like the actual strategy of the implementation.
Yeah.
Not so much like how do we do the strategy. I think the strategy part is becoming more important. It's kind of like
Yeah.
anything is possible now. So it's about being really smart and focused about what you're trying to achieve.
Good thing. We know that Webflow is powerful, but the real leverage comes from how you build around it, really. Okay, so is there any like a final message that you wanna share with the people?
Final message. I mean, uh, I think it's like a really exciting time to be in the Webflow space. I think there's like a lot of open questions about AI and like integrations. And, I think even the idea of what integration even is anymore is starting to change. It's not just like a Zapier connection anymore. It's like hooking an AI and MCPs and things like that. Um, and so I think it's a really exciting time. But at the same time, I think like there's a lot of value in using Webflow as a platform because like it gives you that stability and ease of use, and then you can layer on all of these like exciting and experimental things on top of it. It's a really exciting space, and like I still consider myself a Webflow developer, and it's a space like I still enjoy being in.
It's a growing, scaling space. I think is just gonna become larger, and more and more people will use it over time. Okay, uh, that's pretty much it. Uh, can you just maybe share with people where they can find you online, connect? Is there only LinkedIn or some other places as well?
Yeah, LinkedIn would be the place. There's so many social medias. I just try to like focus on one, and LinkedIn seems to be the most valuable one. So, yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search Mitch Davey, and I'll be the Webflow developer guy on there.
Is it Davy or Davy? I said it Davy at the beginning.
Davey, yeah, Davey.
Okay,
Some people
okay.
say like Davies or David or I
Okay.
get it a lot.
It's about, yeah, how I depends on how everybody pronounce it. Okay. Anyway, then thank you so much for being part of this conversation. I enjoyed it a lot. I wanted to cover a lot of this Webflow integrations and stuff like that. Maybe this was helpful for someone to understand what integrations are, how they work, how much you can use it. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on all of this. Thanks.
For sure, yeah. Thanks for having me, man. It was really fun.
No problem. Hopefully we can catch up some other time as well. Thank you guys for listening and watching. So yeah, see you next time. Cheers. Bye.